Hi. Welcome to our party. I've been really excited about this. It's so nice of all of you to come.
So I can tell people here don't recognize you. This is Mike Nesmith, and he's a sculptor, nude portrait artist, and many other things.
Mountaineer.
Mountaineer.
Not sure what that means.
Spelunker. So, Mike, we met, I don't know, 3-4 months ago by email when a weird mutual friend, John Brockman, who is the literary agent behind Infinite Tuesday,
Correct.
sent me an email describing this event and saying, you got to meet Nez and start riffing and see if you can keep riffing until this thing happens. And we've been doing that. So our preparation for tonight was not very structured, but was a sort of riff. And in the process, we've become friends. And I've got a number of friendly and difficult questions for you that I'll pose.
I was glad that John set us up because I was stumped. I had no idea who to ask to come up here and be the interlocutor.
Well,
So there was a moment there where I was just up here by myself saying, my book. I wrote a book. Here it is.
who here has the book, by the way?
They all do now.
All do? Okay, great. Who here has read the book?
Oh,
Okay.
nice, nice.
All right, well, for those of you who haven't read it, I want to just jump right into a passage that really jumped out at me and that I
Jump
think
away.
frames your creative trajectory in an interesting way. On page 73, you describe a weekend in Ojai where you, Jack Nicholson, the Monkees, some of the other cats you were hanging around with at that time were smoking a lot of dope, which, as a 32-year-old, I've never been able to know the drug that it refers to.
Dope.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I hear different things at different times, but in any event...
Are you asking now, or are you going to
well,
wait?
And what's your answer?
You're going to build up to it?
Well, I want to know what your answer
Well, it
is.
depends on the build-up, because we could get away with a lot here.
Yeah. Well, in any event...
Grass.
Okay.
Marijuana. Cannabis.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. It's popular and legal here.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any event, it was working, you describe it, that weekend. And Nicholson, as you put it, wrote a script based on the conversation you guys were sort of riffing on.
Yeah.
And what he produced, you said, shook the base of media in a way nothing you had seen before had done.
Hmm.
And what was interesting about this to me in the context of the book was that it strikes me that you're an artist who not only focuses on the content of the medium, but on the medium itself.
Hmm.
And that from the sort of fourth wall piercing of the Monkees to the invention of the music video to the things you're doing now, even as a writer, you like to push and pull on and flip inside out formats themselves. And so I'm curious to know how you think about your relationship to the formats that you've created within and what you've seen to be their greatest merits and deficiencies and why you've sort of found yourself wandering to new ones, one after the next.
Wow.
And enjoy! 45 minutes.
Well, do you want me to talk about Head at all? The movie that shook the foundations?
Well, I only prepared one question, so go wherever you want.
Well, yeah, before we get into
Yeah.
all the stuff that I did, you know, Head was sui generis in its own way. I mean, it was wacko. And if you read in the book, Bob Ravelson and Jack Nicholson wrote it together. But what the four Monkees, the four cast members did, and Jack and Bob and Bert Schneider did while we were up there, was just stay high most of a weekend and giggle and laugh and tell each other jokes and just carry on. We didn't have any particular structure, but tape recorders were running. So when it was over, we all went back and Jack and Bob conferred, got into a huddle and started putting stuff together. But as you might imagine, the whole thing looked like Merry Pranksters. I mean, just somebody wagging ideas around. And there was no real traction. There was no narrative structure to it. There was nothing, it was just one massive riff after another. And, but it was, that's a typical quality of being drug fueled. Being cannabis fueled. I mean, you get out there. I mean, I don't know whether you've been in a hospital or whatever your drug experience has been. They're all pretty much the same, and they're all kind of like, for at least that's the way it was for me back in the day when I was doing them. And so when they got back, and we're looking at, Bob tells a story about how he called up Jack in the middle of a session that they were writing, and Jack said, "You seem a little down." And Bob said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about really dark stuff." And Jack said, "Really? What? Like what?" He said, and Bob said, "Like the darkest thing in the world." And Jack said, "Well, what would that be, Bob?" And Bob said, "Victor Mature's hair." If I had been in the room, I would have lost it. I would still be laughing about it because that's a great drug riff. And Nicholson was a master of that. And he and Nicholson said, "That's it. It takes place in Victor Mature's hair." The whole movie takes place in Victor Mature's hair. Well, that was the only narrative structure that was discussed among the two of them at all that I know about. So, but it was magical because it was a real thing. Not Victor Mature's hair, but the darkness of it was a real thing, and it was the diegesis, the outskirts of the film against which the film was played. And it just left so many things off the table when it brought all these other things on the table. One of the things it left off the table was continuity.
Who needs that in a movie?
Who needs continuity? Yeah. So just to continuity is when the actor has glasses in their hands, they walk into a door, and then you switch everything over so you can shoot the other side of the door. The glasses have to be in the same hand when they come through the door, otherwise it's like one of those, and then it gets written up everywhere. And so, but this movie had no continuity in it at all. I mean, at one point you've got a Coca-Cola machine on a dunes somewhere that Mick blows up with a gun that comes on top of a cannon that's on top of an Italian army tank that is just driven in from nowhere. Well, what is that? What does that mean, if it means anything?
We've all been waiting for you to tell us.
Yeah, well, and I'm here to tell you that it is art in its purest form. It's not, high holy art, because you're just riffing. You're just a riff when you're in a band, and you come to a transition place in music, which ordinarily the music would carry you through. A riff just plays over the top of that, and you move from one key to the next, or you move from one melody line to the next. That's the way it happens in music. Well, the way it happens in film is much the same way, but nobody did it. Nobody was doing it except, a few crazy animators here and there, and had gone, from the early days, the 20s, all the way up through the 40s and 50s in this very strict continuity. And the continuity, like if you watch the Fred and Ginger movies, you can imagine the effort that it took to keep those two dancing exactly the same way as they went in and out of scenes and so forth. And there's a lot to be said for continuity. But in terms of it just letting it being the role of the picture, the movie one after the other, you can just let it develop a feeling that you have. And what Jack started to do was to push inside these scenes that were coming along a narrative sense of what the Monkees were, where they had come from, where they were headed, what was going to happen to it. And the first thing that they did at the beginning of the movie was to throw the Monkees off a bridge. like Geppetto throwing the marionette off of a bridge. And then it just proceeds from there, and you just take it in. Now, it's obvious that it helps if you're a little high. But that doesn't solve the problem of, what is this thing?
Right.
And it was, when I watched it, I started to see how innovative it was, how revolutionary it was. Bob and Jack are bright, bright guys. And they're, they were at it in a way that was very hip. You have to go back and grind through it again. But that's what I mean by the fact that it shook the foundations of media, because nobody had come up against that the way they came up against it. I didn't see anything like I'd never seen anything like that before. Now, that may not be entirely true because I haven't seen everything that was there. I didn't know what they were doing in Czechoslovakian films, if those were being done at all. But for me, that was like, boy, this is new. And one of the things I loved about being in the Monkees was it was new. It was, people just making stuff up all the time. Just,
right.
Let's just do this. Why? I don't know.
But I want to talk a little bit, and we'll get out of the Monkees quickly, because most of the book, there's one chapter devoted to the Monkees. Most
Right.
of the book is about your life before and after the Monkees.
Right.
And in the way you just described the making of Head, sort of counterintuitively, it almost feels like you were a passenger in this moment. And many of us have a job out of college or something, or out of high school. In some ways, it feels like the Monkees was just the job you got. It wasn't your whole identity.
Fatburger King.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yet, as you go through life subsequent to that, it's such a iconic cultural moment that people always go, "You're the guy from the Monkees."
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about your relationship with the Monkees in that moment, which is something you described in the book in quite a bit of detail.
Well, it was a television show. We were called in what's called a cattle call. They just put it out on the trades. Hundreds of people show up. They have early selectors and filters, and they say, "Thank you very much, next, thank you very much, next, thank you very much, please give your pictures to so-and-so." And that's your next step up the ladder. And that ladder is, maybe 15 or 20 rungs. And you go up and you go up and you go up, and the field begins to come down. So by the time it got down to the four of us, we were looking at each other like you and I are looking at each other, and okay, this is it. What is this? And I think to some degree Peter, although the four of us didn't discuss this at all, thought, oh, I'm here to write songs and play music, and I'm in a band. But that wasn't what it was. I was in a TV show. I was an actor in a television show. And as that began to dawn on me, I realized what an extraordinary opportunity it was, and what a great thing that it just happened, because it was unique. There wasn't anything else out there like it. I don't know whether Mick and Davey did. They were both serious professionals for a long time. Davey was a Broadway star, and Mickey was a television star, kind of. He had been a child actor, and they were competent players. They knew what they were doing. Peter and I didn't have a clue. We were just out there on the stage, sound stage, and what do? I started watching Mick. Whatever he does, I'm doing. I'll just stand over here, and he knows where the camera is and what it's going to do, and I'll do it too. But by and large, as the thing started to develop, there wasn't really a whole lot of traction for me as an individual. It was for me as a character actor. Well, I wasn't a character actor. I'd sort of wandered in a strange door, and this thing was, and I was fascinated with it. I thought it was a great thing, but I just didn't know what it was and how it would work. Over time, I got more and more used to it, and I got more and more easy with it and knew how to make it work. And after the end of the first year, after we'd actually gone and started performing as a band, which was just a little miracle, and once that started to happen and the whole thing took on a life, it took on a place in my life that was very much like going to work and doing a job. I was in a creative team of 150 people, 3 of which were in the same principal role that I was in. and we were all very fond of each other. I mean, it was a great role. I mean, we weren't Monty Python. You know, we were having all of our stuff written for us, and we were doing what we were supposed to do, and it was aimed at a kind of simple innocence that kids shows are kind of aimed at. We had no idea that it had this traction, of sophistication to it. That, you know, on the one hand, Warhol was thinking, this is cool, and Tim Leary was thinking, this is subversive, and they had all these different people around looking at this particular show, which had none of that in intentionally. But it started to take on weight. Well, as it took on weight, my part in it did, but it wasn't enough in terms of what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I had, you know, at that point, I wasn't sure, but I thought I had another 50 or 60 years to go.
Prior, you wanted to be just a musician, right?
Well, as far as I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, keep in mind, I'm the guy that ran away from Texas because he wasn't married to the mother of his child.
Sure.
And that's, you know, that was a time to get out, fill his pack.
Yeah. I couldn't find you on Facebook.
No.
Yeah.
No. So, you know, the beginnings were inauspicious.
Yeah.
And what I was doing was looking for a way to feed my child.
Right.
And feed my wife and feed myself. And I thought, well, I can't play the guitar very well and I can't write very well. Why don't I try to do that as a living? And as silly as it sounds, that's really where I ended up at a point saying, I think I could probably do this as well as I can do anything. And this has a long arc to it. I'll start off. Well, you know, by the time the TV show came on, it gave it a sort of foundation. And I knew that the TV show would stop at a certain point. I didn't know where it would. But then I knew I would step off onto something else, and I didn't know what that was. So I thought, well, just be quiet here. Don't get dragged off the plane, and be calm, and wait until it rolls out.
Right.
And then you can go back to either what you were doing, or who knows, you might start all sorts of other stuff,
Right.
which is the way it worked out.
Well, and in the book, you take us on a ride with you to some of the historic figures
Oh, yeah.
who you encountered. I don't know if we have it, that we could pull up the Hendrix or John Lennon photos.
There's Jimmy.
Look at that. And you talk about...
Mickey took that picture in a hotel room.
You talk about him teach. I don't know if that's what was happening right here, but you talk about asking him to teach you how to play Purple Haze.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. I don't know who said that, but you got it, pal. That was it. It's like, really? He was a little bit like that. I said, Jimmy, can you, because he'd come to us, he was opening for us.
Yeah.
And he was opening for us in Jacksonville. We'd taken over one wing of a hotel, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good, because I had known about him from London. It's going to be great to hang out with this guy and see him. All the way down to the end of the hotel, doors this big, down at the end of the hotel, and it opens up, and it's lined with police coming down this way. And Hendrix walking in there, boop, boop, boop. These three little figures like this, and Hendrix got hair out to here, and this massively psychedelic setup, and Nolan Mitcher right there by him, and they just start this parade down the thing. And he's revolutionizing everything he touches, including his own life, but definitely music. He comes down there, and I thought, I'm going to get as close to this guy as I possibly can, see what can happen. And the first thing I did was, after the show that night, I came into his room, and we were sitting there, and he was sitting on the bed, and I said, Jimmy, this is amazing. Can you teach me how to play like that? And he said, I don't think so. So yeah, whoever said yeah, or whoever said, ha! And I said, well, I'd really love to learn to play Purple Haze. And he said, and he was a very generous, soft-spoken, easy-going guy. I found him immensely attractive. He was diminutive. He was a small guy. I mean, until he got on stage, at which point he was 12 and a half feet tall. But just hanging out, he was just a very easygoing, I guess that's the way to put it. And he said, well, I'll show you how it goes. So he takes out the guitar, he takes out the guitar. And he says, well, here's the lick, da-da-dee-da, da-da-dee-da. And I said, okay. Da-da-dee-da, da-da-dee-da. And after I got to da-da-dee-da, I realized, there ain't no way I'm going to play this. This is not that. What he's doing up there on stage is not this. This is just in a completely different level of thought. And so I thought, thank you so much for taking your time. That was very, very sweet of you and very kind of you to show me the lick to Purple Haze, and I learned it about like you thought I might have learned it, which was, It never
But
happened.
you make the comment that in that moment, you saw what it was like for Jimi Hendrix to play, but Jimi Hendrix himself never got to see Jimi Hendrix. And similarly, you talk about Lennon, back at his apartment or something in London, playing you some of the tapes from Sgt. Pepper before it comes out, and you thinking this is astonishing, to realize that he has no idea what this is. Talk about that.
Well, the minute I got any money, I went over to England to meet whoever I could meet and see what was going on. London was the center of the world in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And I got connected with John, and he invited Phyllis and I out to the house. We stayed out there with him, and we started talking. He was another very affable guy. He had a little bit of an edge to him. He was a little wicked, but he was funny, and he was a good time. And I really enjoyed his company. And we hung out and went to dinner and so forth. There was when they were doing Day of the Life, and the Beatles were doing Day in the Life, and there was a big session, and everybody was sort of invited. And I was in there with the Monkees. We were playing shows. And but John again asked us to come out and stay at the house. And we went down to the session and listened to the session, and it was kind of a mind-blowing experience because it was so, the phrase I use in the book is easy speed. Easy speed is, I learned it over the years from racing cars and from lifting heavy objects and from doing things that take a tremendous amount of effort. And if you can accomplish this task, this massive task, with a minimal effort, not that it's easy to do, but that you do it so efficiently that it looks effortless, that's easy speed. And you see guys with, 95-mile-an-hour fastballs throw them, and you wonder, how do they do that? Well, it was the same thing with the London art and music scene of the times. People looked great. The architecture was fantastic. The conversations were wonderful. It wasn't hectic and crazy, though. It was very easy going. So John comes home from the studio, and I'm there with Phyllis and Cynthia, the gang in his house, and he comes in, he says, it was great sessions and so on and so forth. I brought some acetates home and played for him. And so he puts them on the turntable and he plays a few bars of it. I can't remember what it was exactly. And he looks at me and he says, how does the bass sound to you? And I wanted to say it amazing. I wanted to say my entire, this is rearranging my musical centers. But I didn't really say much. I just said, it sounds pretty good. He said, well, do you think it needs to be louder? And by that time, I was backing away. I was almost out the front door. It was like, I don't know. But he let it go. But what I realized when I was talking to him there is that he was asking from a place of deep sincerity. He wasn't soliciting my opinion. He was asking somebody else who heard the record at the same time that he heard the record, what they thought of what they just heard. It was a very casual, how do you like the soup? I mean, it was like that kind of a comment. And as such, it was legitimate and a very valid thing for him to say. But what dawned on me was that he doesn't really know where he is or what he's doing regards the Beatles. I know. I've seen the Beatles. I watched them play. It was mind-altering. It was wonderful. But he doesn't know. He's one of the 4 people on the planet that has never seen the Beatles. And that's cool. Right? That's interesting. And the same thing happened with Hendrix. Hendrix had done a great turn for me, did a real favor for me. And we were talking afterwards. We'd gone up to the room, and I said, "So what's next for you, Jim?" Because by this time he had his own 100,000-seat stadiums. You know, he was a mega star. And he said, "Well, I think I'm going to play some R&B." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Yeah, I'm thinking, me and Buddy Guy." "You know Buddy Guy?" I said, I kind of know Buddy Guy. Yeah. I'm thinking I'm working with Buddy Guy a little bit, and none of this is stacking up in any way that makes any sense to me. And he says, "Yeah, and I'm going to take some vocal lessons." And I said, "Vocal lessons? You're the greatest rock and roll hit singer in the history of rock and roll. Everybody wants to sound like you. You set the standard. What do you mean? What are they going to teach you? What vocal lessons exactly are you thinking of taking?" And he said, "Well, I sing a little bit flat." I said, "Well, I have no comment," and we let it go. But at that moment, another nickel dropped, or whatever you want to call it, dropped in my mind, and it was, this guy doesn't know either. He's never seen Jimi Hendrix play.
Right.
But I have. So there was not much to say. It was like, "You've never seen yourself play, Jimmy. You really don't know what's going on, but it is amazing."
Well, Nez, I want to know a little bit about, in both of those instances, obviously the genius of those 2 artists, well appreciated by everyone, sort of still is.
Yeah, well, it all changed the world.
It's as obvious as it gets. But you also talk about some of your favorites musically, particularly in your early days, Bo Diddley and some of the folks you saw play in Burbank and North Hollywood or whatever. And you talk in the way that only musicians do, which are about these sort of ephemeral, essential qualities that can exist in someone's playing. Just the right pocket or the kind of easy speed feel to what they're doing. How much of what you've learned about art, now that you're a writer, do you think you can put into words versus how much of it do you think just sort of lives in your instincts?
Well, I don't think I could put any of it into words. You kind of have to write around it. And you can write around it. I mean, you can bring it to life and water it and nourish it, and people who read the words and have the words inspire them. But what's happened just right now, and that question that you just asked me is something that happens so many times when you're talking, and as a musician, and as from your time at La La Land, I'll bet you a donut, that at some point you move into this realm of spirituality. It's entirely spiritual. You move into a space that you're past all of the music, you're past all of the electronics, you're past all of the tools, you're past all of the techniques and everything. It doesn't mean you throw them away. They're very foundational. You've got to have them. You've got to have the science. Art is applied science in this way that we're talking. And when that pops up, when this spiritual sense pops up, it's ineffable. You can't describe it. You can't go. All you can do is go, ha! But you see how full of a meaning that was, and he was dead right. And it communicates in a way. Well, when you got that, when Bo Diddley did what he did the first time I ever heard it, I was holy smokes, but I couldn't describe it. And I can't describe it now. I mean, here we have great people, and you and I are talking this down, and it's fun. But I don't think I can write about it. I don't, what did Martin Mull say? Writing about music is like dancing about architecture. Good line, isn't it?
We talked a little bit about easy speed, but one of the things, and it's actually pretty accurate in the description of the book, that this is a sort of pilgrimage in search of a set of principles to live by. And I don't know if the book proposes any principles in a moralistic way, but what it struck me that you did do was begin to expose to us your internal lexicon. And you mentioned easy speed, but there are a handful of these other crystallizations of your worldview that come up in just one or two words. High lonesome, celebrity psychosis, the Hollywood mind, certainly Infinite Tuesday. And I wonder if, in as efficient a way as possible, you can kind of give us maybe 2 or 3 minutes on each of those.
Well, okay, let's start. Bring up the Infinite Tuesday slide again. Remember the first cartoon that you saw up here? It's the first. It's in the book, actually. This is where the title comes from. This Tuesday thing. And Douglas Adams is a very close friend of mine. We were having dinner one night, and he started to tell the story of having seen this cartoon for the first time and how it had changed his life. And the remarkable thing was that I'd seen it back for the first time, and it changed my life. So I said, Douglas, we share this. And he said, well, I'm not surprised. I said, that's the way these things work. As Douglas would say it. And I took that forward, and when I wrote the book, I realized that we were talking about something that's buried in this funny cartoon. I mean, you can say the funny line, and you can get a laugh at dinner if you tell it right, and people will laugh at it, and you can print it up like this, and it's funny in its own way. But there's something really deeply funny about it, because it's so absurd and so obscure and so strange, and it just hits a sense of humor that's an unusual sense of humor. And what I found out with Douglas. And there are all sorts of these things littered throughout my life. Say it's littered, I should say strewn. More like flower petals. And you come across them, and they do have this quality. They all share a very basic, it is a principle. I mean, the spiritual idea is a principled idea. I mean, it doesn't just wander around in some vapor. It's not. It would be inexquisite if it was. It's infinite and highly principled. So, with those sorts of tools to work with as an artist, anytime you see it expressed someplace, you can just jump on it. For me, early Bo Diddley was that. But every once in a while, you see something that's wacko, and it's just purely yours. Easy Speed was like that. Celebrity Psychosis was like that.
Talk about Celebrity Psychosis, because you had a case of it, right?
Yeah, boy, did I ever.
What is Celebrity Psychosis?
Well, it's a riff. It's just a pure-on riff. It goes to the idea that because you're a celebrity, you're powerful. And, you can wax eloquent on the state of volcanoes. I mean, I don't know why people think that. But I know what started to happen to me when I got the job in the Monkees, and Bert Schneider sent me to screening rooms to watch A Face in the Crowd, the Andy Griffith movie about Lonesome Road. I didn't understand what he was trying to say. I do now. He was saying, because he had a pretty bad case of celebrity psychosis himself, but he wasn't really a celebrity. And a television star is a celebrity beyond anything one can imagine. You just can't imagine what comes in off of that screen into your life. It's, honey, come here and look at this. What is this thing? I don't know. I've never seen that before. Well, it's celebrity psychosis. And I now can park my car any place I want to because I'm a celebrity. Get off my lawn. Don't take pictures of me unless they're on the front page. I mean, it's a kind of craziness.
Right.
And you see it with celebrities around all the time, and if you know it, you've got 2/3 of it caught and destroyed. You go, aha, I see that. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have those ideas in my head. What I want to have in my head is some sort of level playing field that's got a good foundation and that has a good sense of values and morals and so on and so forth, and that the celebrity has everything to do with it. And there's a half a dozen others. A Hollywood Mind, which is measuring everything by ticket sales. That goes on all the time. And you when you meet people that have these kinds of pathologies, I don't know, it's not really a it's not really a disease,
Sure.
but you can use a disease to paint it if you want to. Did I stump you there?
No, it's
DA?
great. I think that was perfect.
Okay.
I understand these concepts even less than I did before you started.
That's why he's here, kids.
I do want to talk about one more thing before we open it up, and believe it or not, we're at that time.
Are we really? I'm having such a good time.
Well, we can take questions for 3 or 4 hours, so. Everyone line up. You talk about High Lonesome, and in our conversation subsequent to my reading the book, you talk about life being sort of this set of hills and valleys, and unless you're in a valley climbing some hill, it's not exciting. And I'm curious to talk about some of the agony and anguish, creative and otherwise, that sort of has trailed you around and periodically surfaced.
Well, can I read
Yeah?
from here? Can I read what I wrote about High Lonesome? It's a
Yeah.
paragraph. Can we sit still for me to read this? I have to find it. Do you know where it is? Oh, look. Never mind.
Got it?
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is I don't know what chapter this is in. This is about the point in my life where I had done the First National Band, and I was doing country music, and I was stretching out in different areas of writing and so forth, and trying to get my feet as an artist. And I kept coming back to this very, very sad place. And I didn't quite know what to do with it. But this is what I write about it in the book. And this will describe this sad place. I hope it does. Deep in the bowels of sorrow, in the songs of the hard-laboring, slow-growing, painful life that is mortality, there is embedded a concept shared among country and blues writers and musicians called High Lonesome. Those two words describe the deepest pain experienced in this life. A pain so intense that to merely describe it is to experience it in some degree. This high lonesome is beyond the reach of anything the human senses know. It cannot be seen, heard, or felt physically. It's accessed only through the heart and the soul. It is the essence of loss, lost love, lost chances, lost life. And nothing is ever sadder or more difficult to bear. It is wanting to love, feeling the need to love, deep and real, and having no place for it. It is affection, pure and sweet, with no one to receive it, no one to know it, no one to give it to or share it with. So this feeling sits and wails like a lost child in a desert, nothing for miles in any direction but its own sorrowful sound. A cry not for food or shelter or power or money. This sadness cannot be assuaged by any finite element. High Lonesome had been the unknown and unintended theme of my life, even when my life looked to an outsider like an example of great success. Buried within the life of all mortals is one resounding and echoing heartbreak after another, one despairing moment repeating and repeating, even if it is unrecognized. High lonesome is the feeling that accompanies it, and is the purest blue the mind can paint.
Well, that's just one typical passage from this book, which is full of equally poignant and essential insights into your experience and the broader human experience. And I know folks here have thousands of pent-up questions they want to ask. We can only take a few, but let's get to it.
Okay, I will bring the microphone out. Just a quick reminder, questions around here generally start with a W or an H, sometimes a D. They are typically short. We do not believe in two-part questions, and only D.A. Wallach gets to ask follow-up questions.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Ann, and you talked about high lonesome. Can you talk about how you get past high lonesome, or what have you done to do that in your life?
Well, its cure is joy, and joy lives on its own and destroys everything unlike itself. How you bring that into your experience, I think, is highly individual. I don't have any idea. The way I bring it into mine is through art, beauty.
Hi, my name's Jason. Kind of a selfish question. I wanted to know about the track called Birth of an Accidental Hipster from Good Times. To me, it encapsulates everything that was great about the Monkees and you and just the vibe to it. I just was curious how it sort of came to you, what you thought of it, and just if we're ever going to hear the demos, I guess. But it's one of my favorite things you've ever done, so.
Thanks. Is there a question in there? How I found
Yeah,
it?
it's
I just
when
missed it.
when it first came to you from Paul Weller and Noel Gallagher.
Yeah.
What if it hit you as a great sort of tribute to the Monkees and what you guys were, or what you thought of it when you first heard it?
Well, if you could have heard that demo, you would understand. The answer is I had no idea what was going on with it. the demo was like scrambled eggs. Or like scrambled eggs was McCartney's name for yesterday, right? Yeah, that's what it was like. But I chased Mick around, and I said, we should sing this, Mick. We should sing this. And he really wasn't on for it for a while. And then my son, Christian, who's a, first call pro recording engineer and player and everything else, said, well, I can put you guys together on the record. We can work out the parts. You can sing separately. So that's how the record started to be. And I think as it became a record, it came to life. And so what you said didn't really happen until we got past the scrambled egg stage. And that took some work from everybody. I mean, these things do. These things take a lot of work. I mean, a lot of people. The Monkees, that's one of the things I mean when I say that the Monkees were, that it was created. That it was something very special that was created, unique in that way, and for me, wonderful in that way. So.
Hi, my name's Clive. I love the production work you've done throughout the decades and everything, but very early on in the Monkees, you were allowed to produce some of the tracks with some amazing musicians. I was just wondering how you managed to do that. Was that an early form of celebrity psychosis that you're able to say, hey, I want to produce these?
Well, I guess so. I mean, you kind of, celebrity psychosis and some of these things, they're invisible to the bearer. High lonesome is invisible to the bearer. You don't know you got it until you think, why do I feel so awful? I just feel like I can't do anything. And then if you're an artist and you're dealing in these various things, it pops into your mind why it is. But the thing that was... this is hard. There's something that happens in working in a team that's bigger than the team itself. And that happened a lot during the Monkees and so forth. And it looks like celebrity psychosis, but it's not. It's a bona fide support system. It comes from your teammates, and it's one of the reasons you fall in love with them. It's why I love David, Mickey, and Peter, because we fell in love with each other. We were out there, and we were great friends on that stage, and in the thing, and it creates something. But it is very similar, and you do still continue to park in the fire lane and dare people to tow your car. I mean, there's a wacko element to these things. But in terms of the way it can support, if you can really mine out of High Lonesome the joy that cures it, you really got hold of something. I don't mean to be dogmatic, but there you are.
Hello, my name is Jordan, and I have a question about television parts and, like, how'd you like doing television parts and such?
Well, I loved it. It was one of the high points of my life. I didn't like the fact that it was the lowest rated show on television. That was weird. But I did. I loved doing it, and it was the child of Brandon Tartikoff, the head of NBC, saying, "Can we do elephant parts or music videos with comedy?" And I thought, "Wow, I have no idea. I never thought of that, doing that." But I went forward with his aegis and his support, and pulled in people, and it took a while. The first few guys weren't there, and then Shandling caught it. Gary Shandling, no longer with us, but he caught it, and he said, "This is great, what you're doing here, taking these stand-up comedy routines and making them into these short comedy videos." And I wondered, I couldn't quite get at what he was talking about until it dawned on me, and I think he may have said something that triggered it, is that a stand-up routine is like a song. It's almost exactly like a song. You play it with the same beats, you play it with the same rhythms, you stop, you wait, you're going to drop the line, but you don't. You go over here and mess around a little bit, get a laugh, and then you come back to it, and then you say, and it was Ruby. That's the way a stand-up thing works. Those are the beats. That's the same song. That's the same beat that's in a song, and that's why it was working inside the cinematics and cinematography and the film grammar that we'd used to create the music video and MTV and that stuff. And it was a gas to do. I mean, it was every day laughing all day long. And it wasn't, the people who wrote it up, they were already writing up stuff, things like Gary Shandling had written. And so it just made it wonderful to work on material of that caliber and just laugh your way through it. And it never developed people who had some sort of, pathological need to make other people laugh. It was a genuinely funny thing. It's when you laugh so hard at a dinner party you spill the wine. I loved it. And thanks for asking about it.
Hi, my name is Mia.
Hi, Mia.
I've been in love with you for 31 years, so if I'm a little nervous.
I wondered where you were. I figured she's got to be around here somewhere.
My question to you is, if you're aware of how revolutionary your thinking is. I remember when I was younger, Elephant Parts, when it came out, and it was so different and so forward-thinking that there was nothing else like it, of course. And now, looking into Video Ranch, what you're doing with the virtual reality in the studio, do you get the sense how much further ahead you are than the thinking that's out there? Because I know in 20 years from now, this may be commonplace, but right now it just feels so cutting edge and so revolutionary.
Well, it's a great question, and I appreciate your pointing it out. No, I have no idea. As I'm sure you know, that was the answer to the question. I have absolutely no idea. But as long as I got your attention, let me read to you. I just want to read you one quote, because I've got what are they called? Something when there's a quote at the beginning of a paragraph that's got a thing. This is well, you know what a thing is. Come on. A thing is my way of throwing it over to you to figure out.
It's called a dope.
A dope.
Yeah, it's called dope.
Oh.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
We figured it out. Yeah.
I didn't know it till this minute.
It's yeah.
Well, this is Erwin Schrödinger, who was a physicist. He worked in quantum mechanics, and he worked with brand new ideas. And he was an extraordinary thinker.
Great ping pong player too.
Great ping pong player. Yeah. And from a book that he wrote called "What Is Life?" Here's this quote, and it goes directly to your question. The reason why our sentient, percipient, and thinking ego is met nowhere within our scientific world picture can easily be indicated in 7 words. Because it is itself that world picture. Cool. And that was the Hendrix, Lennon, elephant parts, if I may keep that company.
Now, I just want to ask one follow-up question on this subject, which is to tie a couple things together. You're talking about comedy and your relationship with comedy. And in the book you mentioned, I think, John Cleese saying to you that jokes always get less funny over time. And your question was sort of about when you're living in the future, in the present, do you know it? Or what does that feel like? And then the book's called Infinite Tuesday, and you talk at many points about being tapped into the infinite. Sort of, where do you stand on time
I knew there was a reason I brought you, DA. Or you brought me. No, I can't digest that question. I mean...
Well, what does Infinite Tuesday mean?
Well, it means what I said. It means that moment of connection that is infinite, that connects all of us. You hear politicians talk about it, and it's, oh, brother, here they go. And we're all one big family. Well, yes and no, but as you all know who have a family, that ain't all sweetness and light. Just go to Thanksgiving dinner 1 year over to somebody's house, and you'll be at some point running from the door and avoiding weapons. But there is something that binds us all. There is something that brings us all together. Now, I call it spirit. And I know that there's a reluctance by a lot of people, standard scientists and particle physicists and people who work in different areas of cognitive sciences and so forth. But it's real easy to just call it spirit. It's real easy to say there is an infinite order to things, an infinite existence to things in which we all live, by which we all live, and of which we all share and express to each other. The best of it is love. The worst of it is hate. But they're fortunately not from the same tree. It's a different animal. So, in terms of time, that's a heavy physical question, and the time is just replaced by eternity for me, just the same way that space is replaced by the infinite nature of spirit. That's as far out as I want to go.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
There we go.
2 more.
Hi, my name's Kat, and I want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you. I don't
Hello.
see you. Oh, there
Over
you
here.
are. Hi.
For some reason, the only thing that's on my mind right now is a clip that I think was an ad-lib from the Monkees show. You're speaking with Frank Zappa, and he mentioned you were going to join the Byrds, and I was wondering if you had any anecdotes to share about Frank, if you were friends with him, because
Oh, wow.
I got the impression from that clip that you were.
We talked about him a bunch.
Yeah, we did. Well, Frank was an interesting character, and he was a character, and he was a fine artist. He was a good player. He was a good writer. He had a really great sense about him as an individual artist, as a practitioner of his arts, and I had a lot of respect for him. He was also of a mind that art had to embrace a certain edge that could pierce its limits. And that if it didn't have that, it really wasn't worth doing. And he and I split a little bit on that philosophical basis. We didn't think, but I quite liked him. And so we hung out together. I asked him if he would teach me to play the guitar, and he said no. So that was the difference between him and Jimmy.
And our final question.
Hi, Mike. My name's Abe, over here.
Oh, yeah.
And first of all, I want to thank you for making my Saturday mornings in the 70s a joy, and the rest of my life from there for the last 45 years plus. But my question to you is, I've heard, are you familiar with 7A Records?
Say it again?
7A Records. Are you
Santa
familiar?
Fe?
No, 7A. What numbers is Jim? 7A Records. They've been making the recent releases with Davey and with Mickey and various.
No, I'm not familiar
That
with
kind
that.
of
I'm
answers
sorry.
my question, because they had talked about future releases that they were excited about, and I was wondering if you were going to be involved in any of those.
No, I don't even. I didn't even recognize the name. I'm sorry.
No problem.
There's, the paths diverge. I understand. No, I don't. Hang on there, partner. I am aware that there was an influx from the television in the '60s, and still is, that creates something so vital and so much a part of our lives that we live with it for years and years and years and years. It's very real. And the characters, my characters were Robert Young and Father Knows Best, and Dick Van Dyke with Mary Tyler Moore in the Dick Van Dyke Show. Those are my constituents in my tiny life. And I understand what happens with that and the way they kind of roll along and perpetuate themselves over time. I think it's a good thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I think it's a very good thing. It becomes obtrusive if, it's like talking on the phone in the car. You don't do that, but if you don't do that, then it turns into a really nice thing. And so from time to time, people call up and say, we want to do this, we want to bring this forward, we want this to live forever, we want to do such and such with the Monkees and so forth. And Rhino that's what they specialize in. I don't know about this other label that you're talking about. I know that Rhino specializes in that stuff, in their classic label and so forth. And I love it. I mean, I like the idea of it. I would support it to the degree that I could, and if I was asked. Does that answer your question at all? Okay.
I do want to follow up on that and just riff on what you may be working on now or thinking about next, both musically and as a writer. I hadn't known when I got this book that you'd written several other books before and have things that have been in development for years. And as one does. But you talk about very early in your life kind of catching the muse for the first time and orchestrate or conducting to an invisible audience or something in your house. What's the muse sort of leading you to right now?
Well, the muse has never left me. It's the same muse, the one I talk about in the book, with a great sense of humor and a closet full of costumes. And so that's kind of nice. But there's something that, there's an eternal fire and an internal fire that burns, I think, in all of us. We call it life, but it's something that has an energy to it. And if it pushes me certain ways. I think it pushes everybody certain ways if you know it. and if you can distinguish it from celebrity psychosis. But as it pushes you along, things pop up that you may have never thought to do. And then there you are, saying, that's it. The whole movie takes place in Victor Mature's hair. And I don't have anything like that on the hustings right now. I've got ideas that roll around, and I have my ever-present muse who is entertaining beyond description. But that's all I got right now.
Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Nez.
Yeah, you